They are mysterious markers with bizarre messages.
Artists or pranksters have been sticking these plaques on roadways in other places around the globe for years now.
Toynbee idea in Kubrick's 2001.
Resurrect dead on planet Jupiter.
I have no idea what it means.
Maybe it's a message from space.
The plaques were first sighted in the early 1980s. There are 130 known plaques, most in the U.S.
Philadelphia, Baltimore,
New York, Washington, D.C., Chicago, St. Louis.
Plus, they have been spotted in South America.
City officials we contacted were not aware of their existence.
it's anybody's guess what the meaning really is or who's behind it.
So who is placing these tiles all over Philadelphia and all over the world for that matter?
It's like a scene from the Twilight Zone.
I've never seen one.
Howdy, folks. Welcome back to your favorite podcast, That Would Be Rad, the podcast that majors in 80s and 90s nostalgia, comic culture, all things paranormal, and minors in retro video games, tabletop RPGs, pre-internet mysteries, and raising our kids to be half as cool as we were back in the 80s. I'm your host, Tyler Bentz, and this is your other host,
Woody Brown.
Hey, pal.
Hey, man.
How we doing?
Oh, dude, I'm excited about today. I know I say that almost every show. Well,
yeah.
And I guess that's the beauty of being able to pick what you want to talk about. But I just can't even believe that it's here.
Yeah, this is not, well, I mean, it is what it is. I'm sure you already know about the episode because you've seen the graphic and all that stuff. But this is a topic that is, I mean, honestly, dude, out of all of like the pre-internet, early internet mysteries, this may be my favorite. And to go along with that, is a documentary that makes my number one spot on all-time favorite documentaries. Yeah,
it's pretty amazing. And then also there's just something about this to where a lot of the pre-internet mystery stuff we talk about, like the Mayday mystery or Ong's Hat or
Cicada 3301, Lake City Quiet Pills.
What's the mad?
Captain Cutchie's.
Yep, Key Lime Pie, all that stuff, all of them separately, individually are super interesting, but it's almost like we're viewing them and telling that story from a distance. This one actually, though, and we'll find out why later, and I think that's probably why we feel so almost, tied to it in some way, is that in a way, we're kind of steeped inside of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think so. I think that's definitely why I feel like I have like sort of a personal.
It's not so far out of reach, you know?
Right. Yeah.
So, listeners, here's the thing: buckle up because we're going to dive right in, and immediately, here's what I want you to do. I want you to picture this. All right, It's the middle of a normal day. You're walking through a city. Could be Philly, could be New York, could be DC, and you're doing the thing that we all do. You're not looking up. Now, nowadays, most of us would probably be looking down at our phone, but a while back, you'd just be looking down at the sidewalk, just watching where you're going.
Hey, I'm walking here.
Do you remember that video where that kid's like, that's not how we speak? And he's like, hey. What does he say after that? Some lady like yells at him because he bumps into her on purpose somewhere in New York.
Yeah.
And he's like, look out, I'm walking here. And she's like, and then of course she goes off on him.
Yeah.
And then he's like, he says something else that's kind of stereotypical. Anyway, so just picture you're in that scene. It's just crowded. And if you've never been to one of these cities, if you're a listener and you've never been to a just packed city like New York or something like that, it's kind of hard to visualize really until you're there. And it's just tons of people around, the hustle and bustle of it. And you're kind of looking down at the sidewalk, the crosswalk, the asphalt. And then suddenly right there, embedded in the street like it's been branded into the city itself, is a message.
Yeah.
Not graffiti, not chalk, not even a sticker on a pole, but a tile, a plaque, about the size of a license plate, and it says, Toynbee idea in movie 2001, Resurrect Dead on planet Jupiter. Now,
Man.
seeing that for the first time, maybe this is a route that you take every single day and you've missed this.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe you've seen it a bunch of times. And perhaps that first time you're just kind of like, I wonder what that's about. Or you don't even notice the words on it. But eventually, you're looking at almost like this tile mosaic that has these words, this cryptic message that, I don't know, each piece sort of sounds like it's from a different universe, maybe a cult slogan or some kind of code or warning.
Right.
And what would your first thought be? You know, hey, should I research this? Now, we live in a day and age where we have this luxury to where anything that we're curious about, heck, I mean, you can even just take a picture of it and don't even have to type, what is this? You know what I mean?
Right.
But back in the pre-internet days, this would just be something that baffled you.
Oh, yeah.
So today we're talking about, like we said earlier, one of the most genuinely fascinating urban pre-internet mysteries that I know about, hands down. And one that, like I said, we kind of just feel this connection to because, in a way, we were sort of surrounded by it, seemingly not knowing it, and then later possibly knowing it.
Mm-hmm. So today's episode is about the curious case of the Toynbee Tiles.
So here's what's cool. In this mystery, we're not just talking about one tile in one singular location. Over decades, hundreds of tiles have appeared. Now, Philadelphia is sort of known nowadays as the ground zero of this, but they've also shown up in cities across the U.S. and even South America. We're talking about Boston, D.C., New York, Boston, Kansas City, one outside of Holland Tunnel in New York, Times Square, Brazil, Chile, Argentina, hundreds and hundreds of sightings of these things. And for the longest time, nobody could really answer the obvious questions like who's doing it? How are they doing it in the middle of these busy streets? Because, by the way, they're not just on a sidewalk. What does this actually all mean?
Basil.
So, what does it all mean, Basil? So, before we go full detective mode, dude, and start chasing down leads and stuff, we kind of have to bring in, for those not familiar with this mystery, we need to, explain what exactly are these Toynbee tiles? Because here's the deal. If you've never seen one in real life or you never heard about it like I hadn't, or at least I didn't remember hearing that or didn't know what they were called, I should say. This whole story kind of sounds a little bit, well, it kind of sounds like the kind of stuff that if you have a friend like me, like Tyler, they would text you in the middle of the night and say, dude, there's this message in the street that says, resurrect the dead on Jupiter. And you'd be like, okay, cool, man, I'm going to bed, you know?
Yeah, dude, the funny thing is, and honestly, I think part of the reason that I do love the documentary so much is our sort of lead in the movie, this sort of researcher, if you will, named Justin Duerr. He is one of those guys who's a lot like me. He's very, and there's a lot of people who are observant and all that stuff. But I feel like we both sort of are always kind of like looking at the abstract in things, It's like we're always sort of looking like past sort of the mundane, the everyday, and so like I feel like I can really sort of relate with this guy. In fact, the way that he sort of discovered himself the Toynbee Tiles, and we'll get into the documentary and all that here in a little bit, but the way that he sort of discovered the tiles was sort of the way that I discovered it. And first off, I got to say that I think being in a touring band is probably the best way. It's probably the best profession for seeing the tiles. Pre-internet, sort of discovering this sort of, I don't know, phenomenon. Yeah. But I remember, and I probably have these dates wrong, but I remember seeing one in it was either DC when we played, which is one of the funniest experiences of my life. We played this Ethiopian restaurant of all places. In DC. And I mean,
just so much thanks and gratitude needs to go to the booking agent for hooking us up with that one,
Yeah. No, I mean, it was a blast.
It was. Quick side note, is that this huge group of friends and fans and stuff came up from Atlanta to see the show, and then they ended up following us around for a couple weeks, or not a couple weeks, but a couple dates afterwards.
Right,
it was incredible, man.
Yeah, it was incredible, and honestly, like I will never get rid of the image in my head of our bass player, Boo Boo, Chris Martin. If you're listening, Boo Boo, we love you and miss you very much. But every single time somebody would come into the restaurant, he would have to lift his bass totally vertical so that the door could open and then they could come in. So like, you know, we were kind of a high energy outfit back in the day, and every time I look over, he is just furious because he's having to basically be the doorman of this restaurant. Anyway, all that to say, I'm pretty sure we were either in DC or maybe even Philly. You know, the Liberty Bell scene
incident,
which is also pretty hilarious. But so it was either one of those cities, and I remember seeing it and just being like, huh, that's weird. And we touring, you just start seeing like a lot of stuff, because like you're walking a lot in these big cities, and so it's a lot different from in the place that we grow up or that we live now, to where the majority of your transportation is driving. So you're rarely really like in the streets to be able to see this stuff, you know? So I think I've narrowed it down to either Philly or DC. I remember then seeing it, and this is where like the order is wrong. I remember we were driving on an interstate, maybe leaving DC, or maybe, I don't know. I feel like this is like a totally different like part of a tour. And I remember we were in like dead stop traffic on like an interstate or like a major kind of highway, and seeing it off it was kind of like off on like the medium. And that was where I was like, oh, I think that's interesting. I've seen this before. And then I remember seeing it again in New York. And in New York, I remember telling you, dude, this is like a thing. I've like seen multiple of these things. And so, you know, having this like sort of personal experience, do you remember like me ever saying that?
I mean, vaguely, but I don't know if that's just my mind filling in the blanks. I mean, I'll tell you what, I do remember the DC traffic and trying to navigate that big old tour van through all that. I mean, people talk trash about New York City and traffic and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, and even DC, it's more just like it's congested. It's not dangerous. You know, Atlanta's the worst in terms of people just driving like lunatics.
Yeah.
DC was just, man, it just took forever to get around, you know.
Well, DC's weird too. Like their interstates are very like if I remember correctly, it's really easy to like miss your exit. Remember,
remember we went down some road that was just a dead end in the middle of the night or something?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, let's get back here. So Tyler sees these, but for those that have never seen one, I kind of want to, you know, explain in more detail sort of what they look like. You know, obviously, you know, you can pull a picture up of them, but for those of you listening and driving and hopefully staying safe while you do so, just listen to this description. Basically, these Toynbee tiles are small, clearly handmade plaques embedded directly into the asphalt.
Yeah.
Most often at intersections, sometimes right in crosswalk lanes. So cars literally driving right over them all the time.
Yep.
Typically described as about the size of a license plate. And the classic message shows up again and again with some small variations throughout, which we'll get to. But the main one is typically first line. It says Toynbee Idea. The next line says in Kubrick's 2001, or it will say in movie 2001.
Right.
The next line is Resurrect Dead. And then the next final line says on planet Jupiter.
Yeah.
And that's kind of basically it. I mean, they're relatively simplistic. The thing is, too, when you look at them, they're not like these little neat engraved plaques, right?
Yeah.
They're like homemade, like I said before, street mosaics with bold black lettering, often in all caps, usually surrounded by a thick border. And the vibe is kind of like a mix between I don't know, a ransom note or a propaganda flyer or a DIY art project.
Yeah, the other thing about them, I gotta say, being Southerners living here in North Georgia, there's a lot of like similarity in like folk art to me, and like outsider sort of primitive art. You know, like a lot of, and I feel like you used to see this a lot, but like every now and then you'll see it in like the really small towns or rural parts of Georgia where, you know, and like it's hard to not think, oh, well, this person's nuts. Where it's like, you know, Jesus is coming back, and it's usually very like super religious, but you know, it's that sort of folk art, like very, which I think is cool. It's like it's you can tell that they're not like trained, developed artists, and they're just kind of creating things for the sake of creating, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, and then usually, or also, I should say, I associate things like this. That's funny that you go on the folk art kind of side, and then I'm initially thinking of like sort of like a more punk rock political statement that someone typically will just like spray paint or, you know,
which
plaster
honestly
up on a wall, or
is kind of the city version of that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, for sure. And it's stuff that, again, I feel like nowadays it just isn't present enough. That same sort of like physical media. You know, one of the things I used to love about being in New York is seeing all the movie posters, you know, and it's just like they didn't just put one stuff. Where they would just paste it across a whole side of a construction site, you know, and there's like thousands of the same poster, and then somebody's putting something on top of that, and so eventually you have these like layers of posters, and then the way that it looks when you rip off some of that layer and there's something else underneath it, it's just stuff like that is just amazing, and these tiles sort of have that same effect, you know. But then there's something about it being sort of that mosaic tile feel that makes it seem more permanent, right? Because it's in the middle of this street, and it's not something that's just, you know. So my wife and I watched the documentary, which, by the way, if you're interested in this and you have not seen this documentary, the documentary is called Resurrect Dead, The Mystery of the Toynbee Tiles. It came out in 2011, and it is just fantastic.
So good.
My wife and I watched it whenever I was kind of beginning the research of this topic, just to kind of, you know, remind myself about all the facts and stuff. And one of the first things that she said whenever they first show the tile that I thought was pretty interesting was, she was like, wait a second, that's in the road. How in the world did somebody do that? It's not just laying on top. I mean, it's embedded into the road. How does that happen? And then the other thing she said, and it's just a sign of the times, I had to remind her, this came out in 2011. She's like, is this real, or is this one of those like internet AI? And I'm like, no.
Oh, right.
This came out in 2011, you know?
Dude, that's so sad that's the era that we're in.
Where everything just seems fake.
Everything's fake.
Right.
Yeah, the one, to your point about like the mosaic thing, I didn't really think about that, but you're right. And what he means, if you haven't pulled it up yet, or you haven't seen the documentary or looked into this, is like, it's not just one solid sheet of something like printed. It's like, imagine if you're, I mean, kind of what you, to your point also about like the ransom note. It's like all of the individual letters or like symbols and stuff. It's like they're all individually cut out, and so it's almost like layers of, you know, whatever material or medium they're using. Just if people haven't looked at this, they're probably thinking, oh, it's just like a printed thing, because we went into the wheat paste thing. So I'm saying that's what gives it the mosaic kind of feel. It's all cut out letters. Yeah,
and I wish so bad, and I mean, it's one of those things where I wish I lived in Philadelphia just so that I could walk to one of these that's still around and just feel it with my hands, you know?
I know. Well, one thing I will say, and what's funny is, when I first looked into this a little more and saw that like there are some copycats, right? And at first I was like, that sucks, man. But this goes back to 2011, so I'm wondering if they were inspired by the documentary, but apparently they're still going today. So like there's literally one that was found in Nashville. It's one of the older ones and by the way, it sounds like an art collective or like a group, and I know that they're from New York City, but it's called a House of Hades. And the one in Nashville says House of Hades, the resurrection of Toynbee's idea in society 2011. And then it has the little sub box underneath that says "to punish them all." ... So at first I was like, man, these like copycats. But then I was like, you know what, man? Like, I love this story so much that I'm kind of here for it. Like keeping that going, you know?
For sure.
I think it's really cool.
I do too. That's awesome, man. The other thing about these that I think is important to bring up is while most of the time the main message with small variations was the same, they would also include these extra little side text or sub messages that were often more aggressive or almost paranoid sounding.
Yeah. They sort of added to, you know, if Resurrect Dead was sort of your main point, they would have sort of these like little sidebar, like, which honestly, I mean, you would think would sort of add clarity to maybe what the Tyler was talking about, but in reality, it's like it's almost more confusing. I'm sure you're going to cover this later, but there's like the one they call like the manifesto, which is the massive one. Yeah, that is so confusing.
Yeah, I mean, it was super confusing. Sometimes there'd be warnings about, quote, the press, the feds, conspiracies, Hellion language. It just kind of took it from just, oh, this is an interesting little message to, wait a minute now. And even whenever sort of that part is sort of explained and sort of revealed in the documentary, it's sort of, I don't know, for some reason, it just kind of adds a little bit of, there's an edge of, oh man, you know what I mean? Whenever you read that stuff, not because I'm disappointed that that was part of it, but mainly because you already sort of immediately start to kind of, I don't know, feel sorry for the guy or gal that is putting these tiles down. Like I said before, they weren't just found in one city. This isn't just a Philadelphia oddity, even though, like I said, Philly is pretty much at the heart of it. They have been documented in about 24 major U.S. cities, concentrating mostly in the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic, as far as Kansas City, and as far south as Richmond, Virginia. Plus, again, documented sightings in South America.
Yeah.
The scale of it is important, I think, because immediately it kind of tells you this isn't just a one-off prank or, you know, a group of little punk rockers trying to put out a socially, you know, some social commentary with tiles on a street. This is something deliberate, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, just the logistics alone, it's like, okay, you're telling me that somebody's out there doing these street installations across multiple cities in the middle of the road and intersections and crosswalks. Right. How are you able to lay tiles down and get that? How is it even possible?
Yeah. Which, by the way, in the documentary, when you find out sort of the how, it's like, oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah. And we'll find out. I'll talk about that later too.
Yeah. Also, we should say, if you haven't seen the documentary and this is something that interests you, stop the show now.
Yeah.
Go watch it. It's free on YouTube. The resolution could be better. It's a little low res, but I mean, still totally fine. Yeah, it's not bad. Or, I mean, I think you can still rent it places and stuff, but go watch it now and then come back, because everything that we're talking about is kind of going to sort of spoil it. So just be warned. You know, here's your spoiler warning.
Right. So you kind of have an idea what they look like, but the first confirmed sighting was traced back to Philadelphia in around 1983, which is kind of wild because that means this has been a mystery and sort of in these streets for now over 40 years. Again, as far as materials that they're used, I think, Tyler, you mentioned this earlier, but a lot of them are described as sort of like a linoleum-based tile used with, you know, adhesives, asphalt crack sealant, and then often covered with tar paper.
Yeah, and I think like asbestos plays a big role in it too.
Which sounds safe.
Well, one thing we'll get there.
I don't know if we will. I don't remember the asphalt. It's not in my notes. I mean the asbestos.
Well, there's something that I thought of when I was watching the documentary that they didn't really draw like the comparison, but so the character one, and again we'll get to it. They start kind of narrowing it down, and they say, oh well, there's no way that he could travel because he has like a lung issue. And if you look into handling tar, asbestos, all this stuff is known like as a huge factor in like, lung degeneration.
Yeah. So hold that thought.
Yeah.
Again, because these things are in asphalt, unfortunately for all of us now, 40 plus years later, the Toynbee tiles don't live forever. They get destroyed a little bit by road resurfacing, construction, weather, and sometimes straight up removal. There's no dedicated preservation group in charge of saving them. A lot of them only exist now as photographs. And that's something that's really compelling. At the beginning of this documentary, this guy who we'll kind of talk about in greater detail, Justin Duerr, that this documentary kind of follows. Because I think it's safe to say he's like the number one sort of researcher of this mystery.
Yeah, I should know this, but him and the director basically, he started noticing these things. I think originally he was like a bike courier.
You're talking about Duerr?
Duerr, yeah. And he started to like notice these things, going, through the city of Philly. And he brought it up to his friend who...
So there's a couple of different... John Foy is the director, and then you've got the producer and kind of co-stars, Stephen Wynick and Colin Smith are the ones that you see in the documentary.
Yeah, so Justin kind of like brought up this topic of like, man, this is like really weird. I'm like starting to see these like messages in the pavement. And, our director was like, oh no, that sounds cool. Like, let's do that. And Justin originally thought, oh, well, this is just something that's interesting or cool. And then a couple weeks later, like, they ran into each other and he was like, hey, so let's start this documentary. And it took 6 years, which I'm so thankful and grateful that they stuck it out to make it, because it's so good and the music is awesome and it's just awesome. My only critique when you watch it, and I don't know if you noticed this, but again, 2011, so they're not looking at this as, oh, this will be a documentary that'll be on the internet, right? They're looking at this as like, well, eventually maybe a network will pick this up.
Right.
And so you can see like sort of the little fade outs. I don't know what they're called, but it's like the little fade outs into the scene to where like a commercial break
right
would be. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's other than that, it's just, God, it's so good. So good.
So here we've got these tiles, first maybe found in 1983 or noticed across multiple cities, repeating the same strange phrasing about Kubrick, about Toynbee, Resurrection, Jupiter. What the heck does it even mean? And how are these people doing this for so long and not getting caught?
We'll return after these messages.
Your little one grew 3 inches overnight. Adorable. Also, expensive. Sell their pint-sized pieces on Depop and list them in minutes with no selling fees. Because somewhere, a dad refuses to pay full price for the clothes his kids will outgrow tomorrow. And he's ready to buy your son's entire wardrobe right now. Consider your future growth spurt budget secured. Start selling on Depop, where taste recognizes taste. Payment processing fees and boosting fees still apply. See website for details.
This episode is brought to you by Credit Karma. When it comes to your money, Credit Karma keeps you ahead of the game. You can count on Credit Karma to keep up with your financial needs as they evolve, helping you monitor your progress and giving you personalized recommendations so you can make strides towards your goals. Make sure you're on the right track, no matter where you are on your financial journey. Intuit Credit Karma. Karma you can count on. Download today.
Chronic migraine is 15 or more headache days a month, each lasting 4 hours or more.
Botox, onabotulinum toxin A, prevents headaches in adults with chronic migraine before they start. It's not for those with 14 or fewer headache days a month. It prevents on average 8 to 9 headache days a month versus 6 to 7 for placebo.
Prescription Botox is injected by your doctor. Effects of Botox may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away, as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness can be signs of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Side effects may include allergic reactions, neck and injection site pain, fatigue, and headache. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Don't receive Botox if there's a skin infection. Tell your doctor your medical history, muscle or nerve conditions, including ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects.
Why wait? Ask your doctor, visit BotoxChronicMigraine.com, or call 1-800-44-BOTOX to learn more.
Ever feel like your brain just won't click? Onnit Alpha Brain is a daily supplement engineered to support memory, focus, and mental speed. Made with science-backed ingredients, Onnit Alpha Brain helps you lock in, tune out distractions, and stay sharp. See what your brain can really do. Visit onnit.com and shop Alpha Brain to unlock your next level. That's ONNIT.com.
Want consistent color for every job? Milo's Pro Rewards members get a 20% paint discount on future purchases after paint annual qualifying spend reaches $3,000. Plus, order eligible in-stock paint and paint supplies by 2 p.m. for free same-day delivery by 8 p.m. Improving is easy at Lowe's. Excludes spray paint and mist tints. More exclusions, terms, and conditions apply. Subject to change. Details at Lowe's.com/terms. Same-day delivery valid in select zip codes. Subject to driver availability. Details at Lowe's.com/same-day delivery.
Predator Badlands, now streaming on Hulu and Hulu on Disney+.
Here, you're not the predator. You're the prey. 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 Prey.
Critics are saying it's epic, stunning, and breathtaking.
Many have come here. None have survived.
Predator Badlands, now streaming on Hulu and Hulu on Disney+, rated PG-13.
Hey, this is Woody.
And this is Tyler. And you're listening to That Would Be Rad.
And now, back to our show. All right, so let's kind of dissect, if you're ready for it, let's dissect this message, all right, of the Toynbee Tile. So first, you've got, remember the first line is Toynbee idea, right? Mm-hmm. And maybe, I got to say, this might be even the part that I think I didn't know whatsoever, because it turns out I'm not a history nerd. Now, my wife is, but I'm not. But if you are, you might know this already, but in the mid-20th century, there's a guy named Arnold J. Toynbee, and he was a huge deal. He was this British historian and philosopher who wrote massive, ambitious works about the rise and fall of civilizations. He has these big ideas, and one of them is that societies rise when they respond creatively to challenges and collapse when they fail to. Mm-hmm. So,
which, by the way, he's known as a universal historian, which is kind of what Woody means by the big ideas.
Yeah, I mean, like, some of the stuff is really pretty amazing. I mean, honestly, after kind of seeing them whenever they go into him a little bit in the documentary, it's kind of like, man, I kind of want to get my hands on some of these books. They seem pretty fascinating.
Yeah,
but
pretty
it's
fascinating.
like, why would his name be carved into asphalt in American cities decades later after his sort of height, right? Mm-hmm. Most researchers believed that the tiles are sort of referencing Arnold Toynbee specifically, not just some random Toynbee, for a few reasons. One, he was widely known in the 40s and through the 60s, which lines up with the age range of someone who would be active in the 1980s.
Yep.
He wrote philosophically about human destiny, civilization, and the future of humanity. Mm-hmm. Exactly the kind of stuff someone obsessed with saving humanity from death would latch onto. Mm-hmm. His writing style is sort of sweeping and grand and cosmic in scope, and again, very compatible with someone who's thinking about, later in the tile, resurrecting everyone. Mm-hmm. And
almost like if H.P. Lovecraft wrote nonfiction.
Right. And, he talks about quantum physics a little bit. Yeah. It's just interesting philosophy. And it's just somebody, I feel like thinking, and there's some really good clips of him on the internet giving interviews. And it's really profound stuff. But an important nuance here is that he actually never wrote, I'm talking about Toynbee here, never wrote anything like, we should resurrect the dead on Jupiter.
Right.
That's not his quote or anything like that. It's more of an interpretation someone else may have built out of fragments of philosophy and sci-fi and personal belief and all that.
Which is one of the interesting things about this is you're like the overall sort of concept is like filtered through like multiple filters to get where the Tyler, like the whole belief system is like based on all of these sort of abstract sort of places, and then they're all kind of like put together. It's interesting.
Like
and that's
a mosaic.
sort of like a mosaic.
So the next line, of course, is in movie 2001, or in some other variations, it would say Kubrick's 2001. And that's specifically obviously talking about Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey, which is one of the most famous and also most debated sci-fi films ever made. And I got to make an admission here that I have tried to watch that movie thousands of times, man, and I just can't get through it.
Dude, it is so funny that you said this, because one of the embarrassing admissions that I've been dreading going into this episode was, I've never been able to finish it. I feel like it's one of those things that kind of like the George Lucas, the other movie, what is it? TX-10.
Yeah, his student film,
Yeah. It's kind of like that. It feels like that to me too, where I've tried to watch that as well, and it's just like, man, I feel like if I would have been much older when this came out, I would have been much more impressed. But it kind of like, I mean, I get the importance of it and like the metaphor and all that kind of stuff.
But I mean, it's like first off, it's not tough. Exactly straightforward in terms of plot. Right. It's more symbolic. It's about evolution and intelligence and humanity moving to its next stage of existence and all this kind of thing. And every time I've wanted to watch it, like I said, I try, and I'm just like, God, I can't do it. Now, there's people out there that are slightly older than us. They might think that I'm a lunatic for not appreciating it. I just can't get through it, man.
Yeah, I can't either.
In the movie, that's interesting, and I found this out through the documentary because they talk about it, is it's almost like humanity is sort of nudged forward by this mysterious alien intelligence. And the final act of 2001 takes place near Jupiter. Now, that's the film version, because apparently in the novel, it actually takes place near Saturn. The main character experiences something that looks a lot like death, and then at the end, sort of rebirth, potentially into a higher form of being or whatever. So if you're already somebody that is thinking, humanity needs to evolve past death, then 2001, and I picture this person like going to the theater, watching this and just being like, whoa, this almost looks like a proof of concept sort of on screen, a vision of what could happen, right? And if this happened at the sort of specific moment in this Tyler, not Tyler, but Tyler, I kept on thinking of that. When I was watching the documentary too, it's like, it sounds like the people in White County pronouncing your name every time they say Tyler. Tyler.
Well, that's where the name Tyler comes from.
I didn't. Makes sense.
Yeah, it's like all of our like sort of anthropology of our names come from like what, like jobs basically. Yeah. So that's literally what Tyler means. It's
recently I actually looked up the meaning of my name, and the best way I can explain it is if you haven't seen episode 2 of Knights in the Seventh Kingdom.
Dude, I was waiting.
Did you know I was going to do it? Okay.
I knew it. Real quick though, one thing that I do think is interesting.
This is about 2001.
It is a little bit. Yeah. I think it's interesting that like in 2001 you have like the monoliths.
Yeah.
Which are kind of the things that are supposed to kind of move humanity forward. And it is kind of interesting, the sort of the not really the contrast, but like the connection to these tiles in the streets,
right?
With these like this other like big idea. It's almost like a homegrown version of the monoliths in the movie.
Yeah, I never thought about it that way. That's true.
Yeah.
So let's move to the next line. Resurrect dead, right? This is almost like the emotional core of the whole message, really. So it kind of changes the tone. And, okay, so resurrection isn't metaphorical language. It's, ultimately, I think it's
pretty literal.
Yeah, and it's pretty religious, really. It's this idea that death is not final and that the dead can be brought back physically.
I thought you meant like what his sort of take on what that means is.
So it's like with that, it's sort of, I don't know. It seems like, okay, you've got this guy who first he's referencing this philosopher, right, with these sort of grand ideas, all kinds of metaphysical stuff. And then Stanley Kubrick's movie, which is very sort of like heady and all that. And then he's talking about now resurrection. And to me, it's like, okay, is this somebody that has gone through maybe like a tragedy and
That's
all
exactly
these
what
sort
I
of things combined sort of help give this person hope? I'm not sure, right?
Yeah.
It's just, it feels very like human at this point and less like a prank message and or an art installation. It's something deeper.
Well, also, the takeaway that I got was, and you'll sort of, I feel like this is an easy sort of path to get on once you watch the documentary, but it also sort of felt like almost like somebody that's absolutely brilliant that is maybe on the spectrum a little, that is able to see like intense sort of connective tissue to these big ideas that are, and so it almost feels like somebody who experienced loss, maybe a loved one like mom, dad died. And so to them, they're like, oh, this idea, like we really got to move forward so that we can bring them back before I die.
Right.
And it's interesting because it's like, you look at this stuff and you're like, oh, well, these are just the ramblings of a madman type thing where it's like, well, why is this person made hundreds and hundreds of these tiles? Like, so obviously something is so important to him. And to me, it was like, oh, well, maybe he's just, in his mind, he's thinking, I've got to push this idea forward before I die.
Right. Or let other people know. It kind of reminds me too. It's like this in the same way. If you're excited about something, and especially like belief system is the easiest thing I can compare it to, right? If let's say you're a Christian, you want to tell somebody about that because of what it means to you and what it means overall, right? And so in the same way, I feel like that might be kind of what potentially, it's the thing that I kind of give rationale to in terms of why he just like put it all over the place. He's trying to spread that message and
spread the word
and be like, in a way, sort of like, don't worry because, here, read about this guy, watch this movie, Resurrection. And now the last line on planet Jupiter, that's when it kind of like is like, okay, we got back to the, I guess maybe bizarre because it's like Jupiter, I'm not a history nerd, but I am a little bit of a science nerd. Jupiter's not exactly hospitable. It's a gas giant, meaning there's really not a solid surface you can walk on, which is kind of a weird concept for me. But, crushing pressure, there's radiation, storms the size of our planet Earth, okay? Let me say that again, just in case you didn't hear me. One storm, the size of our whole planet, right? So it's like, why Jupiter? Well, again, going back to 2001, in Kubrick's film, Jupiter is the destination of humanity's next big step. It's the place where transformation happens. Again, Jupiter's massive. If you're kind of fantasizing about resurrecting everyone who ever lived on Earth, you need a lot of space. Jupiter is symbolically the biggest stage in our solar system. And also, we're kind of looking at this through the lens of our own sort of reality and understanding. And so sometimes concepts like this, it's easy for us to be like, well, we wouldn't be able to live on Jupiter. And it's like, let's back it up a second. We're also talking about resurrecting everybody that ever lived. And so if you're able to sort of accept one thing, then, it kind of makes it a little bit easier to sort of just say, well, maybe I don't understand how it's all going to work, but that's what this guy kind of thinks.
Right.
And in a way, like we've been sort of alluding to, this whole thing kind of feels like some sort of manifesto, a belief system in sentence form, that this is the idea, this is the future. And it's something that I think because of the way it's laid out on the road, as you're just kind of passing by, it kind of, I don't know, it sticks in your mind. You can almost visualize that in your mind forever.
Yeah.
It's like the best sort of use case scenario for guerrilla marketing, right? It's simple in design, simple in message, and spread out everywhere.
Yeah, that's a great way to explain it. It is very like guerrilla style marketing.
Yeah.
Speaking of manifesto, actually, there's one tile that you can see in the show that's known as like the manifesto.
Mm-hmm.
I've been having like an extremely hard time finding a legible copy. I really can't like read it, but it's long.
Or here's, I think it's Justin reading it, and he'll just kind of give a few of the sentences and stuff that's included on this really long, really unique manifesto tile. It's so different than the rest.
The manifesto tile was a tile that was on 16th and Chestnut in Philadelphia with just hundreds of words inscribed on it. It has this very long, paranoid, rambling message.
John Knight sent the Mafia to murder me in May of 1991. Journalists, all of them, gloated to my face about my death and Knight Ritter's great power to destroy. In fact, John Knight went into hellion binge of joy over Knight Ritter's great power to destroy. I secured a house with blast doors and fled the country in June of 1991. Orders of NBC executives got the U.S. Federal District's Attorney Office and got the FBI to get Interpol to establish a task force that located me in Dover, England. When back home, Inquirer got union goons from their own employees' union to send down a sports journalist who, with baseball bat, bashed in lights and windows of neighborhood cars, as well as men outside my house. They are stationed there still, waiting for me. NBC, CBS, Group W, Westinghouse, Time, Warner, Fox, Universal, all of the cult of the Hellion, each were much worse than Knight Ritter ever was, mostly Hellion Jews. When KYW and NBC executives told John Knight, the whole coven gloated on how their Soviet pals had found a way to turn it into
It was pretty wild. I mean, it was probably in the top 5 most intense things I've ever seen in my life, you know.
And I think it was paved over around sometime in the later 2000s, which is sad. But yeah, you hear that and it's like, well, let me say this. You hear at first thought, you're like, oh, this dude's just nuts. He's, he probably sent in some weird rambling message to NBC or CBS and they never replied. So in his mind, he sort of crafted this whole idea of like, oh, there's this thing called the cult of the Hellion and, which, by the way, I think is where that House of Hades sort of art collective comes from. I think it's sort of a play off of that cult of the Hellion thing. But, and then he didn't hear a reply, so it just spiraled and he created this thing in his head. What's funny is, as a longtime conspiracy theorist, I also kind of thought that, but then in the last several years, and there's a particular list that's come out, you start seeing stuff that it's like, maybe this isn't as fictional as like what's going on. You know what I mean? I mean, granted, we're going to go more into this particular character of the Tyler, and I think there is some very wild kind of ideas coming out of him. But at least I think there's probably some stuff that there's an ounce of truth in also.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and it's easy to kind of connect the dots. At least, again, all of those things, all those influential things kind of combined.
Right.
It's like you can almost see this like sort of moment of inspiration and epiphany, really, that he might have had to lead him to do this. Now, another big-time character that we kind of just mentioned briefly in this mystery is someone who now is, I think, synonymous with the Toynbee Tiles, and that is Justin Duerr. So Justin Duerr is an artist and writer based in Philadelphia. And again, that detail kind of matters again because Philadelphia is ground zero for this. Tyler mentioned earlier that one of the ways that he had seen these tiles was while he was as like a courier, basically.
Right.
Well, the way he tells it is the first time he notices one of these tiles, he's basically living on a very street level sort of life. He's in a rough living situation at the time. He's kind of moving around the city constantly, squatting in certain areas. I think he might have been around 17, and he was essentially a homeless kid. He dropped out of high school and was living with 16. With a group of other kids. And he sees this thing in the crosswalk, and it's that Toynbee idea in movie 2001, Resurrect Dead on Planet Jupiter. And his reaction isn't like, huh, weird. It's, what the heck is that doing here? Yeah. And, you know, there's certain things I think we all can relate to this that sort of just stand out to us for whatever reason at a certain moment in our life. And for him, it was this. You know, some people might just see something like this and just keep on walking. I mean, I say some people, most people. Think about the millions of people that have just walked right over these things or driven right past and just not even thought, you know, two things about it. Yeah. For him, he wasn't built that way. He, in a lot of ways, is sort of the exact kind of personality, we'll see some similarities later, that you would need to have to chase something like this for years and years. Yeah. There's a moment in the documentary where it interviews his brother and some other friends, and they describe him as just being this relentless guy once he locks onto something. Yeah. He's like not casually curious. He's just all consuming, you know? And I think in a lot of ways, you and I can relate to that, right?
I was about to say it, yeah.
And really, it's kind of one of the reasons, I mean, look, there were other things that were kind of popping up later, but I got to say, he's one of the only reasons that, number one, the documentary exists and the investigation exists at all is because he was just so relentless about it. He didn't move on. He just keeps on keeping on. And in fact, at first, it started with him just trying to find him in his own city. Then, and this was just such a great moment and such a sign of the times, he talks about being extremely excited because he had heard that at the Philadelphia Public Library, they were going to be allowing people to come in and use their internet for free. He calls in to work so that he can go to the library and use the internet.
Also, I think it's so cool, and he says this in the documentary, that his first search of all time of the internet is Toynbee Tiles.
Yeah.
Or Toynbee idea.
Toynbee idea. He types it in, right? And then
nothing.
It pops up and it's like 0 results.
Yeah.
And he's just like, oh, man. So, you know, he then sort of still is kind of doing research on his own, looking around his own city, and imagine how long that would take, right? You're going from block to block. You're trying to find other references or things like that. It's slow working, right? But he's doing it, and he's finding them. He's writing notes in notebooks. He's taking pictures with his camera. And then I think a couple years later, he gets back on the internet, and slowly but surely, he finds these references. He finds a website. There's mentions of sightings in other cities. There's photos. There's documented, hey, this one's on 14th and whatever, and blah, and he's like, whoa. Right. And so he just starts, it kind of shifts from curiosity to like life mission at this point.
Right.
And he takes people along. I mean, they interview his ex-girlfriend who basically said, you know, she was super excited. They were going to New York City. That was a big deal. And, you know, again, they were living, you know, within, you know, within their means big time, right? They weren't like high income sort of people. So this was a big deal to take this trip to New York City. And the whole time, all they're doing is looking at these tiles. She's essentially writing the details down and acting as, I think she says something like, I didn't know it at the time, but all of a sudden I became the Toynbee secretary.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I love that because I definitely see a lot of ourselves in that. You know, it would be like if we all did like a double date, my wife, your wife, trip to Asheville. You know, they're thinking like, oh man, all these restaurants. You and I, though, would want to spend the majority of the time just walking around the abandoned building that was Captain Coochie's.
Right. Exactly.
You know, just trying to like figure out like, can we get in?
Knocking on doors and stuff. Yeah. And I mean, you can see how it kind of took a toll Obviously, she's not his girlfriend anymore. And she kind of alludes to it in a friendly way.
He got married, though.
Okay. Not during this time. Because this, I think, is unglamorous detective work. Slow. It's a grind.
Right.
And this is far before, like, there's no drones. There's not a whole lot of website support, not a whole lot of research. He's actually adding to it. He sort of starts communicating and interacting with a lot of people online and sort of beginning to sort of link the red threads here and there. And that's when he kind of meets one of the guys that ends up, I think, Steve from the documentary. And that's when they kind of link up and start working on this together. And, you know, people start sending him theories and dumping conspiracies in his inbox. And there's all these, like, you're chasing this mystery, but then you're also chasing these false leads and stuff. And so I know it had to have gotten, I don't know, frustrating at times, for sure.
Yeah.
So once they start working on all this, and this is really kind of, as you're watching, it's a fun watch because all of this stuff starts to unfold in real time, which is the best part of any documentary. Documentary that, you know, documentaries are fun when they tell a story. But when this is one of those documentaries that you feel like, okay, they made the decision to research this topic. They're going to film it, not knowing what's going to happen necessarily. And these things start to happen within the documentary. So you're watching, it's less documentary, it's more just story. It's a movie that you're watching and watching it unfold.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, just on its face, this is a topic that is, like, to us, however, is, like, really interesting. But, like, this documentary could have been, like, really boring and nothing could have ever happened. You know, it could have been one of those stories, but you actually do see stuff kind of like unraveling in real time, which is so cool.
Really, really cool. And it just, you know, man, I don't know. It just, it gets you excited, you know, because you're watching them become excited about these things that come in. And one of the very first things that kind of comes in is this lead from a Toynbee tile found in Santiago, Chile. And what's interesting is this one is a lot different from most of the others because instead of the usual sort of message, it includes something pretty shocking. And that is a street address in South Philadelphia.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Listening to this podcast? Smart move. Being financially savvy? Smart move. Another smart move? Having State Farm help you create a competitive price when you choose to bundle home and auto. Bundling, just another way to save with the Personal Price Plan. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
It's a pretty cool place if you're a Martian.
Or a vampire.
You think you really know what's happening around here, don't you? We're fighters for truth, justice, and the American way.
Hey, this is Woody.
And this is Tyler. And you're listening to That Would Be Rad.
And now, back to our show. This is huge because it's like all the time, this Tyler, it feels so weird to say it, has the ability to include other information other than the main sort of manifesto, right?
Right.
But for some reason, this one in Santiago has this address. And so now Justin and, you know, the team, essentially, they go straight to that address in South Philly. I mean, can you imagine the excitement, folks?
Oh.
You're just pursuing this mystery for so long, and now you've got some, you know, compadres with you.
Yeah.
Equally steeped in the love for this. And then one of the leads that comes in is a picture of a tile on the road, and then there's an address, and it's in your own town.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's amazing.
Crazy, right? So they go to this address, and they knock on the door. Nobody answers. The house looks sealed off. In fact, there's these weird sort of bars outside the door. There's a strange, like, pipe coming out of the door with, like, multiple padlocks on it. I mean, it looks a little crazy, honestly.
Honestly, like, it looks like what everything that we've explained to you so far, it looks like where a recluse, madman, whatever terminology you want to use.
Yeah, Mel Gibson in that movie with Conspiracy Theory or whatever it's called.
Like paranoia, like heavy paranoia.
Yeah. And here's the other part, maybe one of my favorite parts. Around the surrounding streets.
Oh, my favorite part too.
Are basically these small sort of almost test tiles.
Right.
Fragments, prototypes, weird sort of partial messages, layered materials, letters that don't fully form words. This was like the testing ground for what would become the Toynbee Tiles. Now imagine that too, man. It's like,
dude, I'm so glad that like you like that as much.
Oh my gosh, it was so cool. Because then it's like, oh my gosh, we're in the right spot.
Right, exactly.
You know, and just imagine how weird it must feel too. They're knocking on this door, nobody's coming to the door. You know, and I don't know. So when you're watching the documentary, you'll see this part. But they knock on the door, and then you can hear dogs barking. I can't tell if it's coming from the address or maybe a neighbor, but it seems like okay, someone's home.
I assumed that it was coming from inside the house.
Yeah,
but
and then it's like, man,
you know.
Now when people knock on my door, I don't answer it either. So
yeah, same. Yeah, exactly. Okay. The other thing is there's sort of a list of characters. There's this guy named
Wait
Franny.
for it.
What?
Wait for it. We're going to talk about the suspect board next. All right.
Okay. No. I'm talking about, these are the funny guy that's talking about.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
So there's like, the funny thing too is like, there's like a cast of characters. This guy named Franny, who is like one of his neighbors. There's another lady, I can't remember her name, but they're kind of like cluing the guys in on, you know, what this character is like.
Yeah, the person living at the address.
Right. He's very quiet. You know, we don't see much of him. But they're like really funny.
Oh,
also,
yeah.
Just the way. And so they even try to knock on the door as well. And, you know, nothing. I mean, I would imagine that they actually did this knowing how much of sort of an obsession this was. But I did keep thinking like, man, if this was me and Woody, we would be camped out. Outside of this
I'll talk about that in just a second.
Yeah,
because it is an interesting sort of aspect once we get into like the end of it all. But so the other clue that's really huge here is that in 1983, so they and I forget how in the documentary, but I think they're just researching stuff on microfiche, which is one of my favorite words ever that just doesn't get used often enough.
No,
microfiche. And they find this newspaper column from the Philadelphia Inquirer dated March 13th, 1983. And it's written by a guy, a columnist named Clark DeLeon, all right? In the column, DeLeon talks about a man who contacted him with a wild proposal. He said that humanity should resurrect every person who ever lived and colonized Jupiter with this resurrected population. Sounds familiar enough to what we've been talking about. The man identifies himself as James Marasco, who described himself to this columnist as a social worker in Philadelphia. He claims to be promoting this idea through something he calls the Minority Association. Now, everyone, remember both James Marasco and Minority Association. We're going to be getting back to that in just a minute, but this is the first time we ever see the Toynbee Tile message appear in real, like, sort of written form media. Not carved into asphalt or a photograph, but in a mainstream newspaper.
Right, existing in like another medium, basically.
Exactly. And now, again, we kind of have like a date, a timestamp, right? March 13th, 1983. It places the idea firmly in the early 80s, which kind of, again, lines up perfectly with the earliest known tile in Philadelphia.
That's what I was about to say, yeah.
Why didn't you?
Well, because you said it.
So, interestingly enough, in the article, the column also suggests that James Marasco might be serious and not a prank caller. He's described as this like a blue-collar earnest and convinced that he's onto something world-changing. The next sort of clue that's interesting that these guys get is, I don't want to call it the weirdest one, but in a lot of ways, and again, I don't want to give everything away. We're going to be kind of diving into this specifically later on in the show, but it kind of throws the investigation sideways a little bit, because around the same time that this idea is floating around in Philadelphia, famous playwright David Mamet publishes this one-act play called 4 a.m. Okay, now listen to this. This is just crazy.
Fascinating. Yeah.
In it, a late-night radio host gets a call from a man who starts ranting about, and I'm 100% not kidding, he starts ranting about Arnold Toynbee, the movie 2001, Resurrecting the Dead, and Jupiter.
Yep.
This is the moment in the documentary, and as investigators, they're just like, okay, what? Right?
Yeah.
Because either David Mamet independently invented a plot that exactly mirrors this bizarre street message, okay?
Which, by the way, David Mamet is a Pulitzer Prize winner who wrote Glengarry Glen Ross. He's like a pretty big
He's a big deal. His daughter's an actress. She was in the HBO show Girls, Shoshana. She's awesome. And yeah, it's not just like, one, I don't know, no-name playwright or something. This guy, he's a big deal. And so again, he either on his own somehow invented this plot that is point for point exact, or he heard this idea somewhere. Now, I will say that Mamet has publicly said that the play is not based on like a real caller or anything. He just kind of invented it as a homage to late night radio call-in shows, and that's his sort of stated position.
Untrue,
right?
David.
And we'll talk about how not only is this overlap too specific to ignore, but something else that kind of happens in the documentary, which is really, really interesting. All right, so as they start to get these clues and start to continue to sort of just gather all this information coming in and streaming in from all sort of sources, they begin to build what I would like to call the suspect board. They kind of narrow it down to 3 real suspects, all right?
Right.
I'll actually name them all. The man currently associated with the South Philly address, okay, his name was Severino, otherwise known as Sevi, last name Verna, okay? Severino Verna. And I'll just start with him, okay? The thing is about each one of these, though, is every single one of them fits in some way.
Yeah.
So suspect number 1, Severino or Sevi Verna. He is kind of the most obvious one. When the documentary crew and Justin sort of meet with some of the neighbors, they kind of paint this picture that this guy, well, it's like hauntingly sort of on brand with who I think we're all sort of painting a picture in our head about this person. He's quiet. He keeps to himself. He goes out late at night. He doesn't really have any sort of social life to speak of. And this is an interesting fact, he's obsessed with pigeons and injured birds, and he nurses them back to health.
Right.
He boards up his windows, chains his doors shut, avoids talking to strangers, and rarely answers the door, even when people knock repeatedly.
Which also the neighbors also say, though, that he's extremely intelligent.
Right.
But he's just like a recluse.
Right.
Doesn't bother anybody, Also, they spoke to his mom, and that's what I was talking about before. They were like, oh, well, there's no, she was like, there's no way that could have been him because he doesn't know anything about this. I've never heard him talk about this, and he can't really travel anywhere because he has a lung condition.
Right. And the reason they bring up the travel is because Justin sort of, and by the way, this scene reminds me of what we did in last week's episode when we just tried to call the guy that wrote the, what I thought was a missing Radiohead song. That kind of plays out in the documentary in real time.
Yeah.
Justin picks up the phone. He's super nervous. He calls the mom. It's awkward. But he basically explains, there's some of them in South America and Argentina. Has he ever traveled there? And she says, no, he can't travel. He's got a lung condition. Okay.
Right. And so from that point, they kind of cross him off the list and move on
to the next one, which is suspect number 2, who is a guy that lived at the same South Philly address, but before Sevy. And he's known as Julius Railroad Joe Paroli.
Julius Paroli.
Yeah. And they just call him Railroad Joe. And so will we from here on out. So Railroad Joe lived in the house before Sevy. He worked for Conrail, which is a railroad company. And here's what's interesting. The documentary team sort of smartly overlays the cities where the tiles appear and the rail routes used by Conrail. It's almost an exact match, right? And they're kind of just amazing. And so was I. I was just like, whoa, holy smokes, man, this is pretty amazing. And as they kind of dig into Railroad Joe's family history, they find out some other interesting pieces that are kind of connections. His family, I think, had some kind of connections to tombstone carving.
Yeah, before him, I think, they were known around for having the Paroli brothers tombstone engravers. So they were the guys that were engraving tombstones in the area.
Right, and so that means they have stone cutting tools.
Yeah.
They've got experience carving letters. It's just interesting, right?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like, you have the railroad track. Railroad Joe worked in the rail yard in Philly. He has a family history of being like engravers. So, I mean, it's kind of like, oh, this is the guy.
Right. And I mean, not only that, you've got, it reminds me like what you said earlier in the show, where being in a touring band was a perfect opportunity for you or I to, or us, a good opportunity for us to be in these cities and potentially have these sightings in the same way. You've got this guy, he's traveling late at night, right? He's going to these other cities. Well, he's like, speaking of nobody's looking, he's carving messages, embedding permanent monuments into the cities along his routes.
Yep.
It's kind of poetic. It's kind of eerie. It kind of fits this myth of that sort of lonely man moving through America at night. The train tracks or something sort of almost Kerouac-esque about it.
Oh, yeah.
And then the theory kind of collapses because Railroad Joe died in the late 80s. And the
he died in
tiles,
87.
Do what? Sorry.
Jesus.
It ain't in dip.
He passed away in 87.
Yeah, he passed away in 87, but the tiles kept appearing well into the 90s and early 2000s. New ones, exactly the same, way. So
and also you may be thinking, oh, well,
maybe somebody
maybe
else.
it's just maybe somebody else, maybe it's somebody just took the mantle, like the House of Hades thing that I mentioned before. There is a full website that is pretty amazing if you're interested, called toynbeeidea.com, and it kind of breaks down everything. And these guys are just they're so obsessed with this. They're so they are the absolute experts on this. And so there's like a full breakdown of who's a copycat, who's real, from the materials used, from the width of the letters. Like they get into it like heavily. And to Woody's point, they definitely are able to see, no, this is the same guy that actually continued on into the 2020s, at least, as being the original Tyler.
Yeah. Wild, man.
Yeah.
So then we come to suspect number 3, the one that was named, or I guess written about in that column that I talked about back in 1983. And that name is James Morasco.
Yeah.
Remember, he's the one that said we should resurrect the dead and colonize Jupiter when he was speaking to that columnist.
Right.
And so naturally, the investigators of the documentary try to find him, right? And here's what they uncover. The only James Morasco listed in the Philadelphia phone directory or phone book lived in this affluent neighborhood. Okay? He was elderly. When they called, I think it was his wife, right, that answered and was like, well, unfortunately, his voice box has been removed. And they talked to her for a little bit longer, and she said, he had nothing to do with that. In fact, there's no records that show a social worker named James Morasco in Philly at the time. He wasn't one,
What? And also you had said that, I think you said this, about him being soft-spoken. To I guess the columnist talked to him on the phone or whatever.
Yeah.
And said, oh, he had like very soft spoken, like bass voice.
Yeah.
And
I think they said soft bass, right? And seriously, I think they said that he's got a soft bass voice. I'm like, what does that mean?
Right. And so at the time when this would have happened, he would have had his voice box removed. So,
right. But, anybody that does have their voice box removed, they can still kind of softly sort of whisper without the aid of any sort of mechanical device. It's not the same as soft bass or whatever, right? So,
right. Yeah.
So now, again, there's no records of a social worker named James Marasco in Philly at the time. There's some connective tissue there, like, okay, soft-spoken, but, he wasn't blue-collar. He lived in an affluent neighborhood. Maybe quiet, but I don't know. It doesn't, plus the wife saying, no. So, again, not only does this turn up as a dead end, but then it starts to beg the question, is James Marasco even a real name?
Right.
Here's something else that is just, I don't know. I file this under other reasons why this is one of my favorite mysteries, because it doesn't just blend sort of this guerrilla marketing stuff and physical media that you can actually like touch and witness and all of that. But it reminds me of some of the other things that we've talked about. You'll be able to tell as soon as I talk about it. But before these messages ever sort of lived on the street, and additionally, when they lived on the street, they started showing up in the air. And not metaphorically, I mean literally in the airwaves and via television.
Mm-hmm.
So based on these guys' investigation, he did a couple things, the Tyler. There were phone calls, right? So he called the columnist. Yep. There were flyers or wheat paste posters.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, my favorite, almost besides the tiles themselves, attempts to hijack radio and television.
Yeah, and for our longtime listeners, we have shows like on number stations.
What's the Mad Max one called? Max Headroom one?
Max Headroom one? I think it's just like the Max Headroom incident or something. Yeah, so we have like a fascination with this because, again, it's sort of a relic from the past. It's a way of kind of going off grid, but still kind of getting your message across with like the pirate radio stuff. Yeah, that's one of the most, maybe like in my top 5 favorite aspects of this whole thing is, and it's kind of pretty minuscule, really, but just the idea of that is so cool to me.
Man, I love it. And also, I love that it's something that's kind of hard to grasp nowadays when we're just streaming everything online anyway.
Right.
We're not using the old rabbit ear antenna to watch a show. The idea of something just breaking in and just it being like hijacked, transmitting a message is just, it's unreal, man.
And so what do you mean by that?
Huh?
Well, you just kind of like went off on this. You didn't really explain like what it is.
Yeah. No. I'm just saying the idea of it is really cool. And so one of the most kind of chilling accounts throughout the documentary is they're interviewing this man who says that in the mid-'80s, he was watching the local news at night. He was alone in his house and just kind of chilling on the couch, watching the news, getting caught up for the day. And the anchor's voice sort of fades out. Static sort of creeps in, and then another voice comes through. It's fast, distorted, urgent, and it's talking about this Toynbee idea.
Mm-hmm.
Moments later, the broadcast sort of snaps back to normal, and so he's like, what in the world? So, this is just about as 80s as it comes. He picked up his phone, and he calls the TV station. Right. Can you imagine having the phone number to the TV station?
That's amazing.
And the operator says, so because he's like explaining, hey, I was watching the news, all of a sudden the signal was interrupted, and then I just hear this man's voice talking about some, weird stuff. And the operator says, well, sir, I'm sorry that happened, and you're not the only one that this happens to, which kind of confirmed in his mind, okay, good, I'm not hallucinating, nobody slipped something in my drink, and that other people had experienced it as well. And I just can't even imagine sort of experiencing that sort of pirate TV broadcasting, right?
Which I feel, again, I don't know. It could be my brain like filling in the gaps, but like I do feel like I remember back in like the rabbit ear days, or even with like early satellite, on your TV. Like I do feel like you would get like interferences every now and then.
Yeah, but usually it's just like another channel. It's not like we must resurrect. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I never had that happen.
And like, so I don't know if everybody's TV had this, but we had channels that go up to like 99.
Oh yeah,
and then those were a little blurry, so you'd kind of try to.
Between.
Anyway, so their investigation. This is where they become good detectives, or at least I should say their detective work. It's evident that they're not just shooting in the dark here, because they take that information and then they think, okay, if somebody's breaking into a television broadcast, what does that mean during this analog era? Well, you had to have the right transmitter, the right frequency, and the proximity to broadcast the signal, and the knowledge to do it all. They knew that they needed to kind of find and research. They figured, and I think they say this in the documentary, where they basically say something like, to have this knowledge at that time, you're kind of able to narrow it down to a group of people. And maybe within that group, they had either heard these broadcasts via shortwave radio or, locally on television. We got to start researching people in the shortwave radio aspect.
Which is so good.
It's just awesome. And, there was this other thing about like flyers and the wheat paste sort of stuff. And the thing about that sort of backs up this idea, because people remembered seeing these flyers locally, sort of pasted and posters pasted around Philadelphia in the early 80s with the same sort of message, references, and this weird mix of sci-fi history and resurrection theology. And get this, man, some of these flyers included instructions for a shortwave radio frequency. And even sometimes a P.O. box to write to. So the group goes and they go to a shortwave radio
like convention almost.
Right? And the thing about shortwave radio is, remember, it's cheap, relatively speaking, especially at the time. It's, kind of pretty easy for you to broadcast yourself. And in doing so, easy to spread sort of anything that you want, whether that's, propaganda or, even just like talk shows and stuff. And so they go to this shortwave radio convention or conference, whatever.
It's like in a hotel.
Yeah, it's exactly like you would think. Early 2000s, guys that are probably mid to late 40s, early 60s, just kind of sitting around talking about all this stuff.
And honestly, dude, did you get like the feeling of, like, those guys remind me of like a guy that used to work on my guitars and amps, Vern.
Yep. Yeah.
Like that kind of guy. Like it made me so nostalgic. And I just, I don't know. I kind of felt like, God, I would love, if I could go back and like sit in one of those, back in the day, I would have been, this is the most boring. I would have thought this is the most boring thing ever, but I don't know. I just had this like nostalgia.
Oh yeah. For the guy that just knows how, it's like the guy that just has interest in taking apart the radio, the portable radio that you've got, and just looking at all the parts, knowing how to fix it. And the guy that you would see at Radio Shack and just be like, hey man, something's going on with my walkie-talkie.
Pretty much Bob from Stranger Things.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So they go to this, and there's this kind of pretty awkward scene where they go to this guy who they wait through his lecture for the day. And I don't even remember what he's talking about.
He's talking about like telepathy.
Okay, maybe. Yeah, okay.
It was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But
and I think maybe they chose that one because they're like, okay, this guy's probably going to be the most open-minded about it.
Yeah. Like fringe, kind of weird.
And so it's like towards the end, he takes questions from the audience, and Justin raises his hand and he's like, hey, it's kind of like, oh, I'm not here with these fellas. You know what I mean? And
vote for Donald.
Yeah, or like, what is he in that thing you do? He's like, I'm not here with these fellas. I've got a pig in the livestock competition, and I'm going to win that blue ribbon. That's kind of like what happens. And he's basically like, we're doing this documentary about, and he basically just kind of gives the gist of what's going on, hoping that somebody in the audience is going to raise their hand and be like, oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's silent, it's awkward, and you can just see that bleeding from the screen, right?
Right.
Because Justin's a great guy, but it is kind of awkward, you know?
Yeah.
And then he says, there's a guy that was sitting in front of me who said, hey, man, find me after this because there's a guy I think that might know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
As I'm watching this unfold, I'm just like, huh, excited, right?
Edge of my seat. Yeah.
Because every time, unlike a lot of stories where a clue is revealed and it just leads to a dead end, you know, and a lot of documentaries will kind of do that and they lead you along and you're like just disappointed.
Wait a minute. This isn't my world. Disappointed!
Yeah. This isn't one of those stories. And so they go and they talk to this guy. And as they're sort of interviewing him, you know, they're asking him some questions. He's like, yeah, I mean, that sounds familiar. And in a way, one thing that I noticed in the documentary with Justin is when he was asking people questions, he did it in a way that sort of gives the opportunity for someone to actually not really know what they're talking about and just end up that wants to be on a documentary or something. But this is where it shifts. And he is asking the guy, okay, well, you know, maybe it doesn't look promising at first.
Mm-hmm.
One of the other guys says, okay, sir, what if, you know, if we said some names, would that maybe ring a bell? And the guy just kind of innocently sort of just says,
or no, he says, do you remember any names? And he says, I don't know, maybe throw some out.
Yeah, throw some at me. Maybe it'll ring a bell. And they say Severino. And he finishes with Verna. And dude, what a moment, because that name wasn't fed to him.
No.
These guys' face just their faces just light up like,
it's huge.
Oh my gosh, it's this huge thing because now they have a name from a stranger that remembers this time
back in like
associated
83.
with this info. Yeah, exactly. In addition to that, okay, they also sort of get on this like shortwave radio show, and this is kind of funny. They're like, okay, Justin explains that he's hoping that when he says this, that the guy that's hosting the show, think of it as just like he's sitting next to this podcaster basically, and he's like, yeah, all this stuff happens or whatever. And this guy's just like, huh, I've never heard of that. And you can see Justin just like get so sad.
Yeah.
But what comes out of that is pretty interesting because later a listener says that they remember hearing this address that was broadcast. There's a P.O. Box address, okay, that was broadcast for people to write to.
Right.
And he remembers that because he actually wrote. The guy says that he's like, man, I thought it was kind of interesting, so I just wrote to the P.O. Box and was like, hey, man, send me some more info about that.
Right.
At this point in the documentary, these guys are like, you know, what? And he's like, yeah, I can look for the stuff. They sent me stuff.
Like
so now,
like physical
documents.
Like almost like a newsletter.
Exactly.
Type thing.
Typed materials and all this kind of stuff. Well, they get these documents and press information for what's called, I mentioned it earlier, the Minority Association. This group that's supposedly promoting this Toynbee idea.
We will return after these messages.
Too Good & Co. coffee creamers are made with farm fresh cream, real milk, and contain 3 grams of sugar per serving. That's 40% less than the 5 grams per serving in leading traditional coffee creamers for a rich, delicious experience. Whether you enjoy your coffee hot, cold, bold, or frothy, Too Good coffee creamers make every sip a good one. Too Good coffee creamers, real goodness in every sip. Find them at your local Kroger in the creamer aisle.
It's tax season, and at LifeLock, we know you're tired of numbers. But here's a big one you need to hear. Billions. That's the amount of money in refunds the IRS has flagged for possible identity fraud. Now here's another big number. 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, we'll fix it guaranteed. One last big number. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast for the threats you can't control. Terms apply.
Experience a membership that backs what you're building with American Express Business Platinum.
Unlock over $3,500 in business and travel value annually with statement credits on select purchases from brands like Dell, Hilton, and Adobe, and other benefits. American Express Business Platinum. There's nothing like it. Based on total potential value of statement credits on select purchases and other benefits, enrollments required, monthly and other limits and terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum.
Gold Bond knows that every glow-up starts with radiant skin. So choose Gold Bond Cocoa Butter Glow for a body lotion that's clinically shown to give you smooth, glowing skin. But don't just take our word for it. 88% of people who tried Gold Bond Cocoa Butter Glow saw glowing skin in just 1 day. Gold Bond Cocoa Butter Glow. Nourish your skin. Reveal your glow. Buy now on Amazon.
This episode is brought to you by Redfin. You're listening to a podcast, which means you're probably multitasking. Maybe even scrolling home listings on Redfin, saving homes without expecting to get them. But Redfin isn't just built for endless browsing. It's built to help you find and own a home. With agents who close twice as many deals, when you find the one, you've got a real shot at getting it. Get started at redfin.com. Own the dream.
America's future can be determined by our dreams and our visions.
It was very intense, bright light.
For over 200 years, there have been reports of giant man-like creatures.
From another dimension, another world, I don't know.
The most intriguing mystery on the North American continent.
This is Joshua Cutchin, and you're at my home for weirdness. That would be rad.
Okay, let's dive into this minority association and these documents. Because this is the point where things are starting to sort of line up and stack up, and it's not as abstract or theoretical anymore. It suddenly becomes like real paper, real ink, real documents that were sent by somebody.
Yeah.
That they had sat down and typed on a typewriter. You know, just as a reminder, folks, we're talking about the early 80s. We're not talking about a time when everybody had a laser printer in their house here.
You had to go to Kinko's or wherever.
Well, I mean, they're just like typing away on a typewriter, maybe even multiple times on their own. Forget about Kinko's.
I see what you're saying.
You see what I'm saying? So, again,
so you're saying like every single, you think, well, you know what's weird?
Maybe.
There are like, so they show it in the documentary, and there are like hand written things on the newsletter. So like, yeah, maybe they are like physically typing up each one.
Right.
Yeah, that's
and the name or the phrase minority association kind of has been floating around this mystery throughout these years. First showing up in the 1983 Enquirer column, mentions in the early broadcasts, hints from shortwave radio listeners, and rumors passed around early on these websites. But nobody had ever seen proof that this group actually existed or anything.
Right.
Until now. So this guy, I think his name, Euless Fleming or something like that. I don't know how to spell it. I just kind of wrote it down. So my apologies, Mr. Fleming.
Not to be confused with Ian Fleming, the writer for James Bond.
So apparently when he was a kid driving from Baltimore to Philadelphia in the early 80s, he was listening to shortwave radio, and he picked up this strange broadcast about, you guessed it, Arnold Toynbee, the movie 2001, Resurrecting the Dead, and Colonizing Jupiter. The voice read out a P.O. Box address, inviting listeners to write in for more info, and he gets that stuff. Not a postcard, not a weird note, but a full press packet. Types documents, explanations, materials, again, from the Minority Association. This guy, I mean, again, this is just made for us. I mean, just like we would do, he kept it.
Yep.
And for decades, man. Think about how many times he probably moved or, and got married and, whatever, and he still got this stuff.
Yeah.
That alone is wild.
Yeah, it's so cool.
So he scans these documents, because now we're talking about, we're in the 2000s, 2011 when this documentary came out, essentially. And he scans these documents, and Justin and the team essentially are just basically watching as they come in, and they're just like, their eyes are just getting big, and they're like, holy smokes.
This is it.
These aren't, ramblings on a napkin or something. It's these plans that the Minority Association has that describe a plan to use science to resurrect every human who has ever lived, the idea that this concept is rooted in Arnold Toynbee's writings, the claim that 2001: A Space Odyssey depicts this evolutionary leap symbolically, the belief that humanity can build heaven through scientific resurrection, and then a call to spread the message through media, radio, and grassroots methods.
Yeah.
So now it has a narrative spine. It's not just a cryptic slogan anymore. It's whatever. It's this distilled slogan of a larger belief system.
It's like a movement almost.
Yeah, man.
Or what they were hoping to turn into a movement.
Right, exactly. And the documents themselves identify James Marasco as the publicity director and spokesperson for the Minority Association. And for a while, this kind of throws the investigators into a spiral because they'd mostly written off Marasco at this point,
right,
as basically a dead end. But now, here they're looking at these typed letters signed by him. And then, and this is so amazing to watch unfold, in one document, only one, the author refers to himself not as Marasco, but as Severino Verna.
Oh, man.
The other thing that these guys find out is that, so besides the documents, besides the fact that both those names are now associated with Severino Verna, because we know that James Marasco, when they did their research, wasn't a real social worker. The only person with that name in the area was just an old guy that, you know, essentially by the time they called him was, you know, dying, right?
Right. And he also was a guy that apparently lived in like a nice neighborhood.
Right.
You know, his wife spoke to him almost like, no, there's no way this could be him.
Exactly. Yeah. So now we know that this was more like almost a mask that Sevi could use. And when Tyler and I were talking about this episode earlier, I said it was like he was our Ethan. One of the things that we've explained, I think, on the show before, when we were, you know, first getting started in our band, I would pretend to be our booking manager, and we made this name up, Ethan, and I would just call venues in other states all the time, talking to their booking guy and just or gal, and just say, yeah, you know, this is Ethan. We got this band. I got this band, Modern Society. You got to see him. You know, look, do you want to be the one that, like,
top of the pops?
You know, do you want to be the venue that can say, hey, we had these guys when they first get started? Or do you want to be the one that, do you want that to be somebody else next door? You know? Anyway, so that's what I think Sevi used. You know, the things that we know about this character is that he was reclusive, he was quiet. Yeah. This gave him the opportunity to be someone else.
Yeah.
A name that didn't have to be, you know, there's obviously some paranoia involved.
Right.
Well,
that was my thing too. Do you think that you think he just stole the name basically?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah. Okay. Just like we did.
Yeah. But it is interesting though that like they just would have stole a name of a person like in the area. You know, it's like maybe he like, I don't know, maybe he ran across Marasco at some point and was like, oh,
maybe he knew him, dude.
Or maybe he knew him,
you know?
Yeah.
Maybe they grew up and it's just one of those, you know, it's kind of like, think of all the people that you know from your school that you don't really talk to, but you could use their name.
Right.
You know, so, okay, so here's something else that's very interesting. One of the Minority Association documents includes this line that reframes the David Mamet connection completely, because it states that the idea of this was first truly publicly disclosed, ready for this, on Larry King's late night radio show in February 1980.
Yeah.
Now, people my age or our age, and certainly younger, kind of just think of Larry King as like the talk show host on, I don't even know what networks, what is that, Fox or CNN? Not as somebody that somebody could just kind of call in randomly to.
Right.
Late night, you know. But in the 80s, that's kind of how he got his start. It's not quite Art Bell level, but he would take some interesting calls too. And just remember, Mamet, that playwright, his play 4 a.m. is explicitly an homage to late night call-in radio culture.
Right. Yeah, the show, I mean, I think you've already said it, but again, the show is, his one-act play, 4 a.m., is literally about a sort of a paranoid, eccentric guy calling in a late night, you know, talk radio show at 4 a.m. explaining all these theories, and then this sort of back and forth.
And I mean, it seems like it's just, I don't know, like it came straight from this. You know, the call becomes a part of radio folklore because, by the way, when Sevi called Larry King, he used the name James Marasco.
Right.
Mamet hears something like that, absorbs the vibe, writes a play about it. You know, essentially is the theory. Again, he denies it, but man alive, I just don't know.
Yeah.
You know, how you can do it. Okay, so now almost all signs are pointing to Severino Verna as the tiler.
Right. The name keeps popping up.
Right. And this is, again, to remind you, I know we've talked about a lot of info in this episode, but this is the home that they went to, knocked on the door, talked to the neighbors about him. He never came to the door. But again, outside of his house, there were all these prototype tiles on the street, you know, showing evidence of him basically trying it all out.
Right.
That coupled with all the documents, he signed one accidentally as his own name.
Right.
You know, all of these things connecting. And here's the other thing that just kind of solidifies it for the audience, but just in general. One of the neighbors remembers a very, very interesting fact about Sevi from back in the day. And that is that they thought it was weird because he used to have this car that did not have a floorboard on the passenger side and had this gigantic antenna on the back of it. Now, folks, the antenna is probably the most obvious part, so we'll start there.
Right.
I mean, that's how he's broadcasting signals as he's driving around. But most importantly, not having a floorboard, what does that allow you to do? Well, you can park, put your emergency lights on, and have all the time in the world you need in the middle of the road to lay down these tiles.
Or no, you don't even need that much time. You just, you're at like a red light, boom, you just drop it underneath.
Drop it down, put the tar paper on, leave it, go.
Right.
Because the tar paper eventually kind of peels off,
right.
and all that's left is the tile. Two things, well, okay, so that to me solidifies it 100% that this is the man that has done this. The tragic part is that for the most part, we're never able to question him about it. We don't have it on camera of him saying, yeah, that was me and why.
Right.
We can only go by the things that he left behind, the documents, the manifesto type material, the tiles themselves and what they say. We didn't really dive too far into the aspects of it where he talks about how the government's coming after him. People shipped him over to a different country, all these kind of stuff that happened throughout the years on some of these little sub-messages on these tiles.
Well,
but
we
two other
talked
things,
a little bit about like on the big like manifesto piece where you hear him talking about it earlier in the show. But yeah, it's like that cult of the Hellion thing, and again, it seems like as he got older, like a lot of older men sort of fall into, is that sort of these sort of, I mean, what would you call it? Like sort of self-perpetuating. It's like they get stuck on something, they can't get off of it, and they're just, it turns into like, you know, it's fueled by like paranoia and like, oh, they're after me, you know, that kind of, and it's like, oh, well, they didn't do this, so this must mean this, and it kind of takes them in these really sort of paranoid directions. One thing that I don't even think we mentioned, though, that they talk about in the documentary is like earlier, and I just thought of this, earlier in Justin's sort of, I don't know, quest for this, remember he like runs across one that was like,
that's what I was going to say, yeah, had
just been dropped.
Yeah, so two things that happened to Justin I think that we have to mention before we really sort of just like wrap it up into a bow here. And that is, one, like Tyler mentioned, he actually comes out of this, I think it's like a corner store,
right,
a bodega or whatever. He goes in for a late night snack, comes out, and he looks down, and this is just one of those moments too. I remember my wife was like, I mean, that just seems a little too crazy. He looks down, and there's one of these tiles. It had freshly been placed. Now, at the time, Justin was living pretty close to Sevi's address.
Right.
So it's not off the, you know, charts in terms of probability, but the fact that he just comes upon it still had the tar paper on it. He like peeled it out and saw the tiles underneath. He then describes basically running down the block, just yelling, "Toynbee idea, Toynbee idea, which made me laugh because just imagine what that sounded like. Everybody's like, what the heck is this guy talking
Dude, you
about?
know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of Linus yelling at the Great Pumpkin.
Mm-hmm.
There's sincerity as far as the eyes can see. Like, come back, Great Pumpkin.
Yeah, right. He's trying to like call it back.
Yeah.
And, you kind of feel sad for him because ultimately, and just imagine obviously if Sevi was using the car, which that's the main method.
Right.
He probably wouldn't have heard him,
Yeah, right.
You've got all that road noise from your floorboard,
Yeah.
not being there. So he probably didn't hear him, but that sucks because he was so close. Now the second thing
real quick though, but one thing that I thought was really sort of sweet about the whole thing is he says, again, I think this was like pretty early in his like quest for this. So he had obviously like discovered, oh wait, there's a lot of these things. Like what is going on? Like probably, I think it was before they started the documentary, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Am I right about that or no? I can't remember. It was earlier, but he knew enough about it that he knew it was like, it was a fascination already. And so he said he like sat on the street, and again, like, he was homeless for a long time and all that kind of stuff. So he was kind of living on the street, but it said that he says that he like sat down on the street and kind of like, this was in the middle of the night. So he waited and watched the sunrise over this tile, basically.
Yeah.
Which I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't remember. I think it was earlier in the documentary whenever he talks about coming upon it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is a really cool sort of description, and just him just wanting to see it be revealed to the day for the first time. It's, he's an artist, and so he's eccentric, and his background is pretty interesting as well.
Yeah.
But another thing that happens, sort of closing it out in terms of what occurred in the documentary, is he's on this bus going home from, I don't know, this is after the documentary, I think, and after they've tried to contact him multiple times throughout the filming to knock on the door and getting other neighbors to knock on him for him, and they're all there, and, ultimately they just kind of like, kind of give up.
Well, and also he had already written, there's like a scene where he's writing this letter.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you kind of get your hopes up a little bit because, it shows him writing this letter, and it's very sincere, very like, hey, we're one of you, we see like what you're doing here, and it's like of value, and, it shows him like putting a stamp on it, mailing it, and, you never get a response.
Right. He's, I think, either coming home from work or he's doing something. Remember, again, he's local to this area.
Mm-hmm.
And he gets on the bus, and he kind of looks over, kind of ahead of him, I think, closer to the front of the bus, and he sees who he believes is the Tyler.
Yeah.
He believes it to be Sevi Verna sitting there. And they kind of have this like unspoken sort of...
Right.
I don't know. There's tension and there is some fear, I think, because I think he realizes that it's Verna. I don't know that Sevi realizes that it's the guy that wrote him and that's been doing this documentary, but that's not to say he's not looking out the window. So there's all this sort of like anxiety. And I think, I can't remember, do they get off at the same bus stop?
Yeah,
they get off at the same.
For Sevi, it was probably, he said he first noticed, and he was like, he just seemed like one of those people that was sort of introspective and sort of caught up in his thoughts. And what was interesting too is like Justin is such a fascinating guy. I've looked into him a lot actually since watching it again. It's almost like he was kind of seeing attributes that he had himself. Which is another cool thing with the movie is like, Sevi was known to like pick up like birds that had been wounded in the street and like raise birds and
specifically pigeons.
Pigeons, yeah, and they called him like the Birdman around the neighborhood. And it's cool too because you see at the beginning of the movie, you see Justin, playing in bands and stuff, and he has a shirt that says like Birdman because him and his family were pigeon rearers.
Yeah, they raised pigeons and
yes.
Even earlier in the documentary too, it shows Justin as a grown man with a bird, and it's like an injured bird that he just found on the street. And he's like nursing it back to health.
Right.
And at the time, you're just kind of like, what is the significance of this? They keep on showing that, and then you kind of realize, oh man,
it's like
he's got so many similarities between himself, and Sevi.
Yeah, it's cool because I don't know. I just think it's so perfectly wraps up the documentary because it feels like, and there's a little bit of sadness and sort of longing in it. At least that's sort of what I gathered. Where, Sevi has sort of sent Justin off on this quest of obsession, and he's like obsessed with it, and he's he sees another person that's like him, and they truly are. Like, there's so many similarities, and they're both like the eccentric, the outcast, the recluse. They're kind of the same person, but Sevi's quest was sort of built on like paranoia and built on all this other kind of stuff that probably wasn't too great, which is why he kept like looking back at Justin on the bus, and that was probably out of paranoia, like, oh, he's following me, he's coming to get me, he's one of the bad guys. And it was this interesting like moment to me, at least. I don't know, I was sort of looking at the bylines of it, is whereas Justin was looking almost as like, oh, this is the guy that sent me on my journey. So it's kind of sad because it was like this moment where Justin's looking at this dude that's so positive, and it's like he's an eccentric and he's weird and he can relate to him. Whereas like the sad part is like the old man, Sevi, is sitting on the bus, probably looking back at Justin as like, oh, he's here to kill me.
Yeah, I know. And they were that close, like these two people that share so much in common and would have probably just endless amounts of conversation.
Right.
Tragically don't get to.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that I wondered, and I kind of, luckily on the documentary's official website, there's a frequently asked questions section. And this section's about the quote-unquote movie's aftermath. Somebody asks, how did Justin know he was seeing the Tyler on the bust? Wasn't it dissatisfying to leave in silence and not speak? And they say Justin had received a physical description of the Tyler from others who had seen him, including members of the film crew, and no, Justin was not dissatisfied by the experience. Rather, it provided the utmost satisfaction for him.
Right.
And so I wondered that too. I was like, what? Like, hey, dude, you're just getting vibes. This has got to be him. That's kind of how it comes off in the movie.
Well, we kind of left out too that they both kind of get off on the same spot, and Justin was like, I should say something, but then he sort of looked him in his eye. He looked in his eyes, and he felt like, nah, I'm just gonna let it be.
Yeah.
And so he didn't say anything. So in the show, it kind of, I guess it kind of does give like a little bit of
was it him? Wasn't it him?
Regret.
I just didn't know. Yeah, there's some regret there, just like it would be for all of us. I think it happened to me kind of this summer. I saw oh God, what's the name of the author?
Hey Pete.
No, it's like it's, I think anytime you were to see somebody that you
I see what you're saying. Yeah,
like whether it's a celebrity or whatever. Nowadays, especially, it's like, do I really want to bug them? Like, I don't want to be the guy that's like, hey, can I take a selfie?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you let that opportunity pass, and you're like, man, yes, it lives in your memory that I got to see, Cameron Diaz sitting outside of South City Kitchen in Atlanta, but I didn't take a picture because she's on the phone, and I don't want to be like, hey, P.
Yeah, you don't.
So,
well, have we told that on the show?
Yeah, we've told that story. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things ever.
Yeah.
But like all that to say, it's just interesting. So another thing that I was wondering about, because clearly there's a couple things here. One, it sort of starts off for decades. This is, a perfect pre-internet mystery where there's this weird message. There's no clear author. Cities full of clues. There's this sort of global scavenger hunt, much like the treasure book that we talk about. Yep. And it's, kind of a mystery people can speculate about and talk about. Nobody gets hurt. There's no privacy at stake. Yeah. But then the deeper the team went and the deeper Justin went, that kind of starts to change a little bit. The mystery narrows. It's a real human being in this recluse is living in South Philly and obviously doesn't want attention. I mean, just go and watch the documentary just to see his door alone. Like, I can't describe it correctly.
Yeah.
And it kind of stuck with me. It's like, yeah, they could have pushed harder, right? They could have just bugged the heck out of him. They could have staked out the location and just sat and waited and filmed him and then ambushed him and be like, okay, we want to know about it, you know?
Right.
But they didn't. And they chose to just not because they lost interest in it or anything like that. It's just that, you know, they were already kind of crossing the line in naming him
right
on the thing. And so people asked about that as well. One of the questions is, isn't it hypocritical to claim to treat the main suspect with sympathy and supposedly respectful distance and yet still release a movie where he is named directly? Here's their answer. I thought that was an interesting question, but the answer is equally interesting. And they said, it was a difficult decision to make, but we ultimately decided that the story must be told. We trusted ourselves to do so delicately, honestly, and thoroughly with the knowledge that it could be told less sympathetically by someone else in the future. You can accuse us of hypocrisy if you like, but rest assured that we spent years deliberating over the best way of handling the story and completely stand by our decisions. I think that's great.
Yeah.
And this question too, real quick. Someone says, well, why didn't you stage a stakeout and catch him in the act of leaving his house late at night? And their answer is, first of all, that's creepy. We deeply respect the Tyler as an artist, thinker, and sensitive individual. So anyway.
Yeah.
It was interesting.
Yeah, I did notice too that like even on the website, there's like a little section where he basically explains how he doesn't want to list the name, even though it's like on the documentary you can clearly find it if you do the research. But on the website it's just TTT, which is, you know, Toynbee Tyler, I guess. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But I think around also there's a cool scene that we didn't get into where the moderator of the website, which as it's kind of been going along from like the early 2000s up until, you know, the documentary came out in 2011, the site had just been kind of becoming an aggregate sort of collector of stories and people could send in stuff. And so that's a really cool scene too, where the moderator, head of the site, finds out about the documentary and he turns over like all that information.
Yeah, they have access to all the emails and messages and everything that anybody has ever sent in, pictures.
Which I think is where the guy that talks about writing down on the radio the mailing address, I think that's where you find out.
Yeah, I think that might be where it came from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you know, it's one of those things where like maybe a lot of listeners to the show would look at it as like, it's like totally, you know, it's just boring, like nothing really happens, like, and you may hate it, and that's okay. Come back next week. But I feel like our group of people and our little family we have here at That Would Be Rad, it's something that, you know, the mystery and the magic is hidden in the mundane. And so a documentary that started with a guy just noticing ends up, you know, I mean, it is kind of amazing. Like, kind of to your point, what you were just saying, just the amount of digging and finding that led them to their conclusion is really a pretty amazing task.
Yeah.
And it's the kind of task and the kind of journey that like people like us can build obsessions over, and we just love it. It's awesome. I think I actually may try to reach out to Justin for like a future episode, maybe on a Patreon or something like that, because he's a really interesting guy. He's an artist. He's sort of an outsider, and I love it. He also did a Kickstarter on a really obscure cartoonist from like the early 1900s named Herbert Crowley.
Yeah.
And so, maybe we get him for that. Like, there's a story that I heard him talking about in another podcast where just that whole journey too. It's one of those things where, you know, people like Joshua Cutchin would refer to as like synchromysticism, to where he's just one of those guys, kind of like us, that I feel like just takes the time to like notice. And I think when you do that, when you see, the clock says 12:51 again, or you know, when you're reading a book and it says the lightning strikes, and then in real life, lightning strikes. Like those little things, I think, really can really fill people's lives with just good and value. And I think Justin is like one of those people who takes the time to notice. So yeah, he's a really interesting guy, and we'll definitely probably try to reach out, in the future, maybe have him on. But yeah, if you love today's episode like we did, reach out, talk about it on our Instagram. If you have another documentary or another topic that's similar vein, pre-internet mysteries, early internet mysteries, sort of the Usenet or the early forums, we love that stuff. We just can't get enough of it. So we'd love to hear about it. Drop us a DM, more long form, shoot it to thatwouldberadpod@gmail.com. If you're brave enough and you want to send that along with a bumper, just telling us about how much you love the show, you can do so on our voice memo on our website, thatwouldberadpodcast.com. If you want to support the show, to keep the lights on, to help ensure more and more and more seasons to come down the line, you can do so over on Patreon, The Rabbit Trail. It's just kind of the best way in real time to show your support for the show. And we're so grateful and so appreciative for the folks who do that and have done it for a long time. I guess that's about it. What do you got? Anything else?
If you have pictures of Toynbee Tiles, because you've seen them in person, that would be an awesome thing to either tag us on Instagram so we can see, or email us as well. I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah, that's a great point. We were thinking about it, and this era, wouldn't have really had like any kind of phone footage that we could have had. I carried around a Soviet era Lomo camera for years, and I probably would have had one of those, but unfortunately, no luck. We never took one. But yeah, if you took one, send it on. And if you find like the House of Hades, even one of those, like, we'd love to see it. All right. Well, we love you. We appreciate you. And as always,
be rad.
That's the way it goes. Clouds in a time where I just needed some sunshine. You were already dead before you became a ghost. You always said our future would be a parade of flowers, but now all that's left is a single rose. That's the way it goes.
Request granted.
Oh, that is like...
Yeah, I'll get to that later. All right.
Oh, I thought he was saying that. Okay, yeah, you cut all that.
Yeah, I will. Thanks. Thanks for showing up, man. Okay. Cool.
Man, it's such a good time to eat.
I'm just chewing my gum, dude. My mouth is getting dry. All right. Well, I'll take it out for just a second.
Man, people love to hear that.
Mm-hmm. Shh.